Hey, what is going on everyone, and welcome to another project. In this project we're going to build a modern login form using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So let's take a short look at what this form actually does. Well, we can log in, of course, but before we do that we need to click on this flickering icon. So when we hover over the icon, you will see a message box appear. Click for login. Now if we click on the icon, the actual login form appears. If we click on it again, it will disappear. So let's click on it. Now let's try to log in. If we try to log in without having anything within the input fields, then we're going to get an alert. So it's going to have some basic verification that the username is empty or less than 3. So we need to have at least 3 digits. So let's type in here Norbert, the username, and now let's try to log in. Of course, username is now correct, but password is still empty or less than 4. So let's try to type in here 1, 2, 3, and just to show you that it's right, if I hover over the icon here, which we're going to get using font awesome, we're going to have another message box which is going to tell us click to show or hide password. So if we click on the I, the password will appear, and now we see we only have 3 digits in here. So if I type in one more, then the login button is going to turn green, and now we can log in. Now after we log in, another page will load, which will just going to say your name and have the icon again, and we can now return to our main page if we want. So that's basically it for the project. Oh yeah, and this animation stops as soon as we have it active. So if we click on it again, it's going to animate once more. Okay, so hope you're excited for this project. If you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing because I post videos like this each and every week. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, then please leave them in the comment section below. If you liked this video, if you disliked it, thumbs up or down. And yeah, this being said, enjoy the video. So let's get into it. Now I just have here a empty folder, just called it login form. Let's create our index.html file. Within here, shift exclamation mark to create a boilerplate. Let's give it the name login form. And now let's start up with our body by just creating a general div container. So I'm going to create a div container with the class of login and dash container. So basically our entire login here, we're going to create it within this login container. Now before we do this, I still want to include 2 more things. First, I need to include our CSS, so link up our style.css, which we now can also create. So new file, style.css, and within here I'm going to include Google Fonts. And from Google Fonts, we're going to use the font Railway. So go to fonts.google.com and type in here Railway. Let me actually make this a bit larger so you can see what I'm doing. Railway, and this is the first one. Now if you wish to select this, I have chosen, let me just think about it. Actually got all the fonts, so let's just select the first one. Let's click on import. You can select this, what is between the style tags, copy it. I'm going to go to CSS, paste it in. And now right after this 100, I'm going to do a semicolon, and then I'm going to type in 200, then another one 300, then 400. So I'm basically just typing in all the font weights that I wish to use. Use 500, 600, 700, and 800 and 900 if you wish. Okay, so this is just basically telling it that, hey, you should use all of these font weights. Okay, so that's it for this part. Now, next up, let's go to Font Awesome. So just type into Google fontawesome.com and you will land on, well, this is actually the font page. And now you can copy in your CDN. Just go to CDN. And now right above our link, we're going to paste in our CDN. Okay, now let's go back to Font Awesome. Let's make this smaller again. And now we can continue on with our HTML. So let's go within the container tags. And let's just start up with an H1, which will have the class of login title dash title. And within here, we're going to type in welcome to, and you can use your own name, Norbert, then a span tag, BM. I'm going to go outside of the span tag, but still remaining within the H1 and Academy. Okay, let's also open this up using live server. So right click, open live server. I'm using the live server extensions. If you wish to install it, then just type in live server, and this is the extension that I'm using. Okay, so this just stops me from constantly refreshing the page. Okay, so there's our page. Now let's also include the font. Awesome. Let's go back here. Let's select our body tag, and let's say font family, and we're going to use the font family that is within Google Fonts for railway. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it into font family, and now we should have our font family changed to railway. Now, still remaining within our body, I want to give each and every text that I'm going to input here a text shadow. This is just a personal preference for me. You don't need to do this, but 2 pixels, and hash 000, which is completely back. Now, this looks for now a bit awkward, but I'm going to take care of this later on. So let's go back to HTML, and let's start right after H1 of adding the subtitle of, let's go with an H2. I'm going to give this a class of subtitle. I'm going to type in here, please log in. Okay, so there's a subtitle. Now, underneath our subtitle, I wish to have, let me open up our finished project, wish to have this logo. Now, in order to have, now for this logo, you can download it. Everything that you're going to see here in all of the references and all of the links you can get from the link in the description below. So let's go down here. If you wish to use another icon, you have a photo of if you have a photo of yourself, you can also do that. So let me just create a folder. Let's call this IMG. And within the IMG, you just need to drag and drop in either this logo or create your own logo, create a photo, whatever you wish. I'm just going to drag in my image, the logo of my company, and let's include it down here. So as I said, after H2, we're going to have this within a div, but this div is going to will be packed in within a anchor tag. So let's select anchor tag, and this is going to go nowhere first of all. So just hash is going to just refresh the page, but within the anchor tag, I'm going to create a div with an ID. So I'm just going to type ID, so hash of logo of login logo. Okay. And within this login logo, so let's go back to our project. As you can see, there's nothing here, but now we're going to go to CSS, and let's start by grabbing onto the ID of login and logo, and let's start styling it. So first things first, in order to see something, I need to give it a height. Let's go with 150 pixels. You could do this. You can obviously do this larger or smaller. We're going to just go with a square of 150 pixels height and width. Now, in order to see the image, let's create a background, and I'm going to type in here URLs. I'm going to give it the path, and the path will be within the image. I'm going to select our image, and we're going to try to center it. Just type in center and cover. Okay, this will center the image. So let's make our border round by typing a border radius of 50%, and that's how we got our logo. Okay, now I want to style this just a bit further on. So let's first of all push it down from the top by giving it a margin from the top of, let's say, 3 rem. Then I'm going to give it a box shadow of 0, 15 pixels and 10 pixels, and also RGBA of 248 for the red, 249 for the green, and 247 for the blue, and a alpha of 0.5. Okay, next up, let's give it a border of 1 pixel solid and a hash of DDD. And now I'm going to create a animation. So let's go down here. Let's create first of all a keyframe. So add keyframes. I'm going to give this the name of logo animation, which is going to make it pulsate. So I'm going to go from 0% when our animation is at 0%. Then it's going to have a opacity of 0.4, a box shadow of 0, 10 pixels, 5 pixels, and a RGBA of 10 for the red, 0 for the green, and 14 for the blue, and 0.1 for the alpha. Then when our animation will be at 50%, so it's at the half of the animation, I'm going to change the opacity to 1, and then increase the box shadow. So I'm just going to copy, what do I have? XP here, should have pixels. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it down here. In the 50%, I'm going to change the alpha to 0.3. And then we're going to, wait, I just want to change, I'm going to change the pixels to 15 and also 15. Why the hell not? Then I'm going to copy the first animation, so it's 0%, I'm going to change it to 100%. It's going to be basically exactly the same thing. Okay, now in order to use our animation, we're going to go back to our login logo, and we're going to type in here, animation. I'm going to use our logo animation. I'm just going to copy the name, paste it in here. It's going to have a duration of 4 seconds, and it's going to have a duration. It's going to take 4 seconds for the animation to fulfill itself, and it's going to be also infinite. So it's never going to stop, okay? So there we go, there's our animation. Next up, I want when I hover over the logo to stop the animation. So let me just show you, if I take the logo again, and let's say I do a hover, and within here we can just set now the animation to none. So let me show you. The animation is continually going, and if I hover over it, it's going to stop. Okay. Now when it stops, I also want to change the opacity back to 1 and change the box shadow to a 0, 10 pixels, 5 pixels, and a RGBA of this one, but this time with the opacity of 1. Okay, so when I hover over it, it's going to stop the animation and change the box shadow. Now, I don't want this to happen abruptly, so I'm also going to include here a transition of 3 seconds and ease. So seconds and ease. Okay, and also I want to include this not only in the hardware effect, but also up here in the main ID. It just doesn't happen abruptly. The box shadow changes with an effect. Now I'm going to use this 3 seconds more often in our project here. So let's go up here completely and let's start creating a couple of variables. Now in order to create variables, you need to target the root. So in order to create a variable, we just type in hyphen hyphen, then the name of the variable. I'm going to name this transition speed. Okay, and I'm going to set the value to 0.3 seconds. So as soon as I use this transition speeds, for example, here, I'm going to use transition speed and already pops up. So in order to use our variable, we need to declare var, and within parentheses, we're going to type in our variable. Now I'm going to use it here and also here. So var, open close parentheses, hyphen hyphen, and transition speed. Now, because we're now at variables, I'm going to create a couple of colors also. So let's type in here comment of, let's make this green. This will be colors. Okay, and also type in here comment variables. Now I'm going to populate this with variables because I'm going to use these colors more than once in our project, and I don't want to add the hexadecimal numbers for the colors. So I'm going to create a primary dark colors. Let's call this prime hyphen dark and color. I'm going to set this to hyphen, this is going to be a dark bluish color, so 24273B. Okay, so this is just the way I'm going to create colors. Now the next I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next 4 colors I'm just going to copy in. I want to type this out and waste your time. So we have a primary light color, which is a, well, this one, a danger color, which is a red color, a success color, which is a green color, and a info color, which is a bluish color. Okay, so these 5 colors we're going to constantly use with, well, within our project. Okay, now let's go back to HTML and let's continue on by creating our entire form. So after our anchor tag, still remaining within this login container, we're going to create, I'm actually going to close this one up. We're going to create our form. Now for this, we're going to use a form tag, so form, and it's going to have the ID of main login form. We're going to delete the action. We're not using node or any kind of backend. Node.js that is. So we're going to just give this a ID, and now within the form we're going to create a couple of groups. So the first group will be a class, so we're just going to create a div with a class of input group. And this input group is going to contain a label, a icon, and an input tag. So we're going to create first of all a label. This is going to have a class of main text color. Hit enter, and we don't need this for, but what we do need is to type in here in the label user name. Okay, after our label we're going to create our icon tag. Now this icon is from Font Awesome, so just type in here I, then a class of FAR, then dot again for the secondary class of FA-user. As soon as we hit enter and hit save, we're going to have a user icon down here. After a user icon, we're going to create an input tag. It's going to have a class of login, user, and name. So this would be the ID, and a class of main text color, just text C. Okay, the type is going to be text, and now let's also create a placeholder type in your name. So, placeholder, and let's type in here type your name. Let's hit save, and there we go. There's our input tag. Now I'm just going to copy this input group, so select it, paste it in underneath our first input, and I'm going to replace this with user password. So for the label ID, I'm sorry, not the label ID, but here the password, the label text would be password. The icon, we're going to change this to key, so FA key, and instead of the FAR, we're going to type in FAS. So let's hit save, and hey, where's my icon? So FA, this is strange. So FAS, FA key. Okay, there you go. Now for the input, we're going to change the type to password. You're going to change the ID to user password. We're going to leave the class of main text color, and we're going to change this to type your password. Again, that's basically it for this input group. Now after our password, I want to have another icon class. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it in, change it back to FAR and FA and I. And this will basically represent that I that we can then click in order for the password to be shown. After the input group, now we can create our submit button, which we're just going to create a button which will also submit our form. We're going to give this a class of btn, btn-danger, and C. Now the type of this button will be submit, so this is actually going to submit our form, and we're also going to give this a ID, and it's going to have the ID of submit login form. So submit login and form. Okay, let's hit save, and let's go down here, and well, that's basically it. The last thing I'm going to also, where's our button? There's a button, should also say something, log in, and boom, there's a button. Okay, now let's start styling this. So let's go back to our CSS. We're going to start up here. Yeah, we can actually start here. So let's start up by styling our main container here. So let's type in here comment of main log in container. Let me scroll down here. Let me also do this so you can see it. Let's actually create here to do main container. Okay, now this right here, what you just saw, is just an extension for better comments. It's actually called better comments. If you go to extensions and type in better comments, then this is the extension right here. Install it, and then you can choose whatever type of comment you wish to create, with an exclamation mark, with a question mark, with a to do, and so far and so on. Okay, now let's close this. Also close this. So let's grab on to the class of log in container, which just wraps around everything. So did I grab onto the right thing? Let me just check. So login container. Yep, this is the one. Okay, now I'm going to position this relative because I'm going to position a couple of things within it absolute. So position relative, then I'm going to give it a width of 500 pixels. Now I'm going to give it a margin from the top and to the bottom of 15 viewport heights and left and right auto. And this is just basically push everything into the center of the page. Now let's display it as flex. And I'm going to display it as flex in order to use the flex direction as a column. And now we can justify the content to the center, which is just put everything in the center of the flex container. And we can also align the items within the container to the center. This will just push everything into the center. Now let's grab onto the login title. So class login and title. Now first of all, let's align the text to the center because this is a title. This should be in the center. I'm going to change now the color of the text to the primary color, so primary.color. And now I'm going to change the font size to 4 rem. Next up, let's grab onto this span that I created, so Norbert PM, and this was in a span. So I'm going to just copy this. And then within our login title, we're going to grab onto the span. And only this span will then have a different color. So let's change the color to the info color. Okay, let's hit save, and there we go. Next up, let's grab onto the subtitle. So sub-title, and we're going to change the font weight of it to 400. Now remember, I also included the font weight of 400 within here. This is why I can now use it. Okay, let's remove the text shadow from this one. So let's set the text shadow to none. Let's give it a margin from the top. So margin top of 2 rem. I'm going to push it down a bit. And let's also increase the letter spacing, letter spacing to 2 pixels. Okay. Now next I want to grab onto this logo. And as you saw in our finished project, when I click on it, it has that shrinking effect. Now this just symbolizes that I actually clicked on it. So we can achieve this by using, let's actually go up here because here's where we styled it. Let's go, so we have a hover, we have our animation. Now I'm going to say that when I click on it, so it's actually active. Sorry about that, it was down in the bottom. So when it's actually active, I want to transform it by using the scale option. I'm going to scale it with 4%, so I'm going to reset its scale to 96%. So just type in 0.96, and when we click on it, you can see it shrinks down 4% of its initial size. Now you can see this happens a bit abruptly, so yes, let's use our transition again. I'm going to use our transition as a transition speed with a variable speed, and now it happens in 0.3 seconds. And this is pretty useful for the variables. If you wish to change this variable to, let's say, 1 second, then everything would have that 1 second duration. You can see it happens, it takes 1 second for this to change, and everything that was going to use this variable is going to have the same speed. And this is just going to show that your site has some kind of consistency within it or to it. Now, because we're here, let me also create, right after this login animation, I'm going to create a class. So should I do it here? Now I'm going to go down here. Let's say, typing here comment, to do create utility classes. What do I mean by this? I'm going to use these classes within JavaScript. Okay, so these classes are not applied within our initial HTML. They're only going to be applied using JavaScript. So let me create here a class. Our first class would be animate. This animate class will just do what it says. It's going to use an animation with the name of logo. And what do I name this? Logo animation. It's going to take 4 seconds and infinite. Okay, so just the same animation that we used for the logo up there. We're now creating a class, and we can apply this class using JavaScript later on to whatever we wish to apply it to. Okay, so now we can grab onto our login form. Let's do this up here. Let's type in comment of login form, because until now we just styled our container. Now we're going to actually style our form. So let's do this by grabbing onto the ID. I think I gave it a ID. Where's our form? There's our form. Let's grab onto our form. Let's grab onto its ID, and we're going to position it relative. We're going to give it a margin from the top of 4 rem, a width of 300 pixels, and I also want to use an animation when this form appears, because you can see in our finished project, a form is actually not displaying when the page loads. Only when we click the form appears, and the form appears from the top, goes down, and it also has an opacity. It comes from nearly invisible and yeah, it becomes visible. So in order to achieve this, we are going to create an animation again, and in order to have an animation, we're going to use a at keyframe. So we're going to call this one display main log in and form. Okay, and this is going to come from the top. We're going to use the from keyword. It's going to come from the top with minus 150 pixels, which would be minus, and it should have a opacity of 0, so it's not visible, and it's going to go to the top 0, so to its initial positioning, which is now relative, and it's going to have the opacity of 1. Okay, now in order to use this animation, we need to include it in our form. So let's include it here in animation, and we're going to use this keyframe, and it's going to have a speed of transition speed, and it's going to have a ease in effect, and this should be actually a variable. So in parentheses and var. Now this animation will only take effect when, as you can see in our finished project, when we click on our logo. And until then, well, the animation, the form is not displayed. So I'm going to display it as none, but comment it out because we still want to style a couple of things within our form. So I'm going to comment this back in when we're going to go over to JavaScript. So let's go under our keyframe and let's continue on styling it by grabbing onto the main login form. So from this form, we're going to grab onto the label. So let's grab onto from the main login form to the label tag. And this is actually going to grab onto all of the label tags. So I'm going to style within our form all of the label text. So let's change our font size to 0.8 rem. Let's also give them a margin from the bottom of 0.5 rem. Let me scroll up a bit. Let's change their color to the variable of dark color. So dark primary color. Let's increase the letter spacing to 1.1 pixel. And let's take out the box shadow, or the text shadow. So text shadow, none. Okay, next up, we're going to style our input text. So I'm going to copy from our main form. I'm going to start styling our input tags. And first of all, I'm going to change the background color to the variable of dark color. Then the color that is going to be typed in within our input tags will have a light color, primary light color. Then I'm going to take out the outlines. So outline, I'm going to set them as none. Okay, so we no longer have those outlines when we click in them. And I'm also going to take out all of the borders by setting them to none and give them a border radius of 5 pixels. Now we're not done yet. I also want to give them a transition, and we'll see why later on, of the variable speed, of transition speed and ease. Now let's give it a bit of a padding of 0.5 rem all around, and I'm going to increase the padding from the left to 1.5 rem because I want to be able to position the icon tags right within the input tags. And let's also increase the letter spacing to 1.1 pixel. Okay, so we got this out of the way. Now we can grab onto the input tags, and only when they're focused, so let me grab onto this and let's use the focus now. So only when they're focused, we're going to change the border bottom to 3 pixels solid, and let's use here a a spring green color. Okay, so only when they're focused, going to have that little border to the bottom. Now let's also grab onto the placeholder, and we can copy this part again. Let's say placeholder, so the input text, not placeholder, shadow, placeholder. And I just want to change the color of the placeholder to a light gray, and let's decrease the font weight to 100. Okay, now let's start styling the input groups, because until now we have our form, we have our label, our icon and our input in one line, and I actually want to have them in a column. So let's do this by grabbing out to the main login form again, and within our main login form, we're going to grab onto the class of input-group. And with this, we're going to actually style both of these. So we're going to display them as flex, then change the flex direction to a column. We're going to give it a margin from the top, so push them both down of 1 rem. And we're going to position them relative in order to use the position absolute then on the icons. Okay, now let's go ahead and start styling our icons. So again, I'm going to concentrate only on the main login form. I'm going to select all of the icon tags, and I'm going to change their color to the primary light color. Now, from our main login form, I'm going to select all of the icon tags, but only those that have the class of FA-key. And from the main login form again, let me go down with this. And I'm going to select the main login form again, comma, and the class of user. So both of these icon tags will be now positioned absolute. And where should they be positioned? Well, we're going to position them to the bottom with 0.5 rem and to the left with 0.3 rem. And if we hit save, they're going to be in the input tags. Now, these two are not positioned correctly, so I'm going to take the FAI. So I'm going to take this, for example, copy it, change it to FAI. And I could just copy this part because we need to position it absolute. I'm going to set it to the border, free rem, but this I'm going to set it to the right side with free rem, so not to the left side. There we go. Now the I is on the right side. And I also want the cursor to be pointer when I hover over it. So I'm going to change the cursor to pointer, so we can then have that effect of the, let me just go back to our finished project. We're going to have that, that message effect. And we can also signify the user that if you click on it, that it is clickable. And if you click on it, you're going to see the eye actually changes. So from a, relatively open eye is going to go to a close or open. Yeah, this is open and this is closed. Now the last thing for our main form container is actually this is going to be a utility class. To go down here and create a class of active, and when this class exists, is going to just display things as block. Okay, simple as that. So we can say that when the main form container. Okay, now we're almost at the end. I just want to create two more things. Actually, we still need to style a button. Oh, sorry about that. So let's go in here. It's still within our main form container. So let's grab on. But this is actually is the utility class. Whatever. So we're going to first of all do a general style for our button. A button should have a margin of 0.25 rem to the top. To left, top and bottom, and 0 to left and right. Then we're going to display it as inline block. We're going to change its font weight to 500. Okay. Now let's change the color of the button to the primary light color. And now we can also change its background color. And you can always see that this is not right. We can't see our text anymore. But don't worry, because I'm going to have different classes for different style of buttons. So let's say if I'm going to have a button with the class of success color. So if a button has this class, then the background color will be, background color will be the success color. And I'm going to do the same thing for danger. I'm just going to copy this, replace both of them. So Control D is going to select both of my successes. And let's replace this with danger. And the last thing I need is a info color. So let's copy this again, paste it in, and let's change the success to info. Okay, basically what this does is, hey, it already has this class of danger because we inserted it within here, danger color. Okay, so the button already has this class. Now we're done. We're not done yet because I still need to change a couple. This is not the button that we want. We're going to change its font family. It will always be inherit. As you can see, now it takes up the font family of the body. It inherits the font family. Then we're going to do a text align to the center, then a font size to 1.5 rem. And this is going to be a long type of styling, and this is why I always use some kind of CSS framework, because normally it takes a lot of time to style a button. And I actually created this, you can see at the end, this longer form of style in my SAS course, I believe. And I'm just extracting always a specific style of button and just paste it in. Okay, this didn't make any sense. So I created a course with SAS, and SAS is extremely helpful when you wish to create, well, a framework. Actually, I created a framework for myself, and I use classes to have specific forms, so specific stylings for forms, for buttons, for input tags, for tables, for cards classes. This is why I'm also using this type of classes. When we're not done here, we're also going to create a couple of alert classes. But you can see CSS is super, and well, it takes a lot of time to code something with CSS, and SAS is much quicker. Why aren't people using SAS? Well, I don't know. I love SAS. So let's continue on with our button. Font size and then line height 1.5. Okay, we're going to set the vertical alignment to the middle, and the rest I'm going to just copy in because it's taking up too much time. Cursor pointer, some from here. So we're going to set the cursor to pointer. So each time we're going to go over a button, the cursor is going to be pointer. We're going to use the user select none. It's also extremely helpful. It doesn't do anything when I click on it. Then we can change the effect using JavaScript or something else. So we always want to set the user select to none. The background color will be normally transparent, and then you can change it by applying it a second class. Applying to the second class is going to always have a border 1 pixel and transparent. Going to always have a padding, a border radius, and text decoration to none. So also if I would use here anchor tag, is going to have no text decoration, and a bit of a text shadow, a bit of a box shadow. So down here you can see a bit of a box shadow, and also the transition. So if you do something with this button, for example, also going to leave this in, we're going to have a hover, then it's going to change its opacity to just 0.8. So if I'm going to go over a button, signifies that I'm on this button. And we're also going to include here this same transition effect, so 0.3 seconds on hover in and hover out. Okay, and that's basically it for our button. Now you can see this is pretty long, and this is why I always use SAS when I'm styling, or I created for myself those components, at least when I'm creating larger projects. Now this just means if I go in here and change this to success, then I'm going to have the same button but just with a different background color. Okay, so let's change this back because we're going to change this a bit later on. So let's go to our finished project. Hey, you should also be displayed as block, or at least have width of 100%. It's going to take up the entire width of its container. Okay, so we're done with this part. Next up, let's see, we're done with our input tags, we're done with our icons, we're done with our effects, we're done with our button. I think we can move on to JavaScript, and the message box and so far and so on going to style when we get to that part. So let's create a JavaScript file. Let's go in here, file, let's call it, doesn't matter, app, no, script, no, main, main.js. Let's call it main.js, and let's also include it right above our body tag, above our closing body tag. Let's say script, and the source will be main.js. Okay, let's also open up a console. So right click, inspect, or F12, and let's just do a console log of log. And there we go, it works. Okay, so let me increase this just a tinge. Boom. Take this out and let's start doing something with our form. Now, first things first, let's grab onto the main form, so main login form and the main login logo. So we're going to do this by creating two variables, const of main login form. I'm going to go to the document .get element by ID. We're going to grab onto the ID of main login form and form, and I'm going to copy this and the main login logo. So just replace the form with logo. There should be capital L, and we don't need you and we don't need you. So let's see if this worked. Console log main login form and main login logo, and we have our form but we don't have our logo. Let me just, oh, we have an M there. Okay, there we go. We have our logo, we have our form. Excellent. So the form is down there, the logo is up here. Now what do we want to do? We want our form to appear. Oh yeah, let's go back to CSS. Let's display our form as none. Where is you? Oh, there we go. Display none, boom, and it's gone. Don't have our form anymore. I'm just going to decrease this a bit. Go back to JavaScript, and now I'm going to grab onto the main logo. And instead of doing add event listener and click and so far and so on, actually let me do this way first of all. And then I'm going to create a function, and this function will, it's an anonymous function, will grab onto the main login form, and it's going to grab onto the class list, and we're going to toggle that class list with the class of active. Okay, let's hit save. So as soon as I click on this, nothing happened. Console log. Okay, it's logging. Why isn't this? Now let me insert here the main login form to this class of active. And now if I click on it, okay, now it works. So basically when this exists, it's going to be displayed as block. If I click on it again, it's going to be displayed as none. So just going to toggle the class of active. Okay, now next up, we also want when our logo is active, we have to no longer have this animation, and this is pretty simple. Take this one out. We're just going to grab onto our main logo, and again, class list dot toggle, and we're going to toggle the class of no animation. So we're going to go back to our CSS, and right where we did our logo, actually we'll also do it down here. So we're going to grab onto the ID of logo of login logo, and when this login logo has the class of no animation, then we're going to set the animation to none, and basically it's going to animate until when it's clicked, and when it's clicked it's no longer animating. Okay, so now we have our login form here, and we can type in something here, and we can type in something in our password where we can see our password, and this is where this I comes into play. So we want, when we click on this I, two things to happen. It's going to show our password, and it's also going to change the I to a open I. So let's go back to JavaScript and to type in here a comment of to do show hide /hide password, and up here I could do a to do show hide login. Now we need here two additional variables. We need a login user password. So let's create the variable of login user and password. We're going to go to the document and get element by ID, and we're going to grab onto the ID of password, user and password, and also to the I. So let's create another const of show hide user password icon. Okay, we're going to go to the document. We're going to use this time query selector, Because I want to select a class of FA and -I. Now that we have these two variables, we can go down here, and before doing this, I'm going to show you something else. So instead of this add event listener, click and function and so forth and so on, I'm going to take this out. I'm going to type in here dot on click, and this is going to be assigned to a arrow function. So parentheses and arrow, and we don't need this anymore. And this is basically going to do exactly the same thing as we did with add event listener, function, so forth and so on. So if I click on it, the login form appears. If I click on it again, this appears, and also this still works. So I want to show you this because this was the simple example. I'm going to use this also on our show hide user password dot on click. I'm going to set it to a arrow function, open close parentheses. It's not going to take in any kind of argument. Arrow function, open and close curly brackets, and we're going to create a if statement because we need a condition when the logo, so when the login user password, so the input dot type is equal to password. Just a second, login, type in password, yes. So what this basically means is if we take a look in our password input, so the type is equal to password. So we just selected our input tag and we're checking if its type is equal to password. In this case, we're going to grab onto the login user password dot type. I'm going to just change it. So we're going to assign it to text. Now, as soon as we do this, we're also going to take on the show hide user password icon and change its class name. So we're going to change the entire class, and we're going to reassign the class to FAS, which was the initial. I'll also show you this. So this right here, FAR. Oh yeah, because it's a different type of I. So we're going to change, instead of a FAR, FAI, we're going to change it to a FAS, FAI. Okay, so just show you this. If this is equal to password, and it is, then I'm going to click on this. It's going to change the text. It's going to change the type to text. It's going to change the I to a, well, another type of I. Now we need to change this back, so I'm going to type in else, and I'm just going to copy this too, paste it in here. So if it's now text, then I'm going to change it back to password. I'm going to change this back to a closed I. So let me try this again. It's password. I'm going to click on it. It's going to change it to text. I'm going to click on it again. It's going to change it back to password, and also the icon, you can say, is changing. Okay, so now we're done with this part. Now let's create the message box. So let's type in here another to do and create message box. Okay. Now we're going to use another kind of command, and this is going to go first of all to the main logo. We're going to say main logo dot on mouse over. I'm going to assign this to an arrow function. And first I'm just going to show you what this does. Then console log. Okay, so this basically just means that when I enter with my mouse, or when I'm over the entire container, it's going to do something. In this case, it's going to log something. So each time I enter, it's going to log something. Now I also want to log when I'm out with my mouse. So on mouse out, log, let's say log out, and log in, log out. Boom. So when I'm in, it's logging in. When I'm out, it's logging out. Okay, so this basically watches if where am I with my mouse? Am I in this or am I out of it? Now when I'm in it, I want the main login logo dot append child, and we're going to append to this a element, and this element is going to be a create message box, and this is also going to take in a argument. So let's create this create message box. So we're going to go down here and let's type in a exclamation mark utility functions. So we had utility classes within here, in our CSS. Now I'm going to create utility functions. So utility and functions. And our first function will be this create message box. So can I use const or function keyword? I'm going to use const this time. I'm going to say, I'm going to send to an arrow function, and this arrow function is going to take in an argument. This time is going to take in a string message. Now, I'm just signifying that this argument that should be passed in here, so for someone that is going to read my code, should be a string. Okay, so when we're going to pass something in here, it should be a string. So it's going to be between quotations. Now, when the string is passed in, then I'm going to create here a a message box. I'm going to create an element. I'm going to create message box, and we're going to go to the document and type in create element. And we're going to just create a div. Now we're going to take this message box that we just created. We're going to give it a class, so dot class name, and this should have the name of message box. Now I'm giving this a class name because I'm going to grab onto it in CSS and style it. Now, what should this box contain? Well, it should contain a message, and the message, so I'm going to grab onto the message box dot inner text, and the text will be whatever we pass in here as a string. Okay, so I'm just going to set this equal this. The inner text is going to be equal to whatever we pass in then in here. And now you remember that we created that animation class. So here, and I'm also going to use this animation class. So let's say message box dot class list toggle. So dot toggle, we're going to toggle the class of animation. So animate. Okay. And then we're just going to return a message box. So all this function does is it creates a message box. It adds a class of message box to it. It creates an element, a div. It adds a class of message box to it. Its inner string, so its inner text is going to be whatever we pass in here, and it's also going to have an animation class when it's created. And yeah, let's try this out. So we're going to just pass in here a string of, let's say, what did it say? Let me just check my notes. It said click for login. So click for login. Okay, so basically when we go over with our mouse, when we enter our mouse here, then whoa, there's our message box. It's horrible. Okay, so there's a message box with click for login. So let's go to CSS and let's style this message box. Okay, first things first, what should I do this here? Yeah, let's type in here message box. So this is the style for the message box. And let's grab onto the class of message box dash box. I'm going to give this first of all a width of 150 pixels. We're going to give it a min height, not a min width, a min height. Because the height of the box then depends on how much message there's in it. So let's give it a 50 pixels. Now we're going to position it absolute. And remember, we did position this relative, so we can now position also things with, we can position elements absolute within it. We're going to position it to the right, 0. I'm going to change the background color of the message box to the variable dark color, so primary dark color. This is not showing. Strange. Woo! Not here. Let's just check something here. So when we go message box, click pen child, create message box. Yeah, I'm going to take care of this later on. So let's go back to CSS. Now whatever is in the message box is going to be displayed as flex. We're going to justify the content to center. We're going to have a text aligned to the center. We're going to also align the items to the center. It's going to have a border of 1 pixel solid, and the variable color of info. So info color then is going to have a border to the I'm going to change the border to the bottom to be 5 pixels, solid, and info color. And we're also going to give it a border radius of 3 pixels. Okay. Now for the text color itself, I'm going to change the color to the light color, so primary light color. And yeah, its font family should be inherit. Okay, so let's try this out again. It seems that I do have a bit of a problem here with my box. So let me reset this. Let's see if I hover. That's strange. Let me just check my notes. Oh yeah, I mistyped here the class, so this is why it didn't take effect. Okay, so there's a class. There's our message box. Woo! Now we also need to make this disappear when we hover out of it. So let's go up here. And we have our log of out. And now we should just remove it. So we need to remove this message box. And how can we remove an element? Well, we're going to select it. So we're going to select our main login logo again. And from it, going to select the message box class. So I'm going to use query selector and dot message box, and we're just going to use the remove operator. So remove, and basically when we hover in, it's going to be added, and when we hover out, it's going to be removed from the DOM. So simple as that. Now I need to do the same thing for our eye here, and this just means that, so create message box, and this is to do info message for logo. And now we need to do the same thing for our eye. So for our password, to do message for password. Okay. Now I could do exactly the same thing that I did here, but I don't want to do this. I actually want to create another function that is going to, well, ease my life a bit. And this function is going to be, just going to create a function on mouse over and out. And this is a cool name for the function. So on mouse over and out. Basically, I'm going to check if I enter and if I exit with the mouse. And this is going to take in 2 arguments. It's going to watch for the element that we're entering or exiting, and it's also going to take in this string message again. Okay, so I'm just going to pass this in here, and now we're going to do exactly as we did up here. Take this, actually take both of them. Take both of them, copy them in. I'm going to take out this and this. And basically, instead of main logo and so far and so on, I'm going to use the element. I'm missing an N here. I'm going to replace this with element. Boom, boom, boom. So this is a variable now. The argument, whatever is going to be passed in here, is going to be watch if we are going with the mouse in. And everything else basically stays the same, excepting this is again the string. Okay, and yeah, everything else stays the same. So I'm just going to use this function up here. I'm going to pass in main logo, and I'm going to pass in this message as a string, of course. And let's see if this is going to do the same thing. I already know that it does because I coded it. So I commented out, and if I go in, then string message. Whoa, then, ooh, there shouldn't be a string anymore. This is actually a variable. So if I hover in, boom, there we go. It has the same effect. So we just eased our life because this function I could now take here and just replace, make a bit of a space, and we're going to replace this with, we show hide user password icon. So instead of main logo, I'm going to pass in this, and I'm going to just type in here. I typed in clock, click. There's also click. Click for show hide, not for to. click to show hide password. Okay, so let's try this out. We're going to click on the logo. And now if we hover over, woo, there we go. There's our show hide password. Okay, and it also should work. It shows and hides the password. Okay, now next up, we're going to take care of the form validation. So for this, we're going to type in here a comment of form validation. We're going to start validating our form from this point on. So we need to, let's call this a capital to do, because we have then another to do validate input, and then another to do with validate time with alert messages. And actually this is going to be above our utility functions. Sorry about that. Okay, so first things first, let's grab onto a couple of variables. So we're going to create a const of form, which is going to grab on from the document. I will use query selected this time. I'm going to grab onto the ID of main log in and form. I could have also used get element by ID, it doesn't matter. Then I'm going to copy this a couple of times. I don't need this one. This would be the log in username. I'm going to grab onto the username. So log in, user, and name. Then we're going to grab onto the user password. So user password, not capital, just user. This is going to grab onto the ID of user password. And we're going to grab onto the submit login form. So this is just this button right here. Okay, go back in here. I'm going to change this to submit log in form. Okay, so we have all of them. So now let's start validating our inputs. And for this, we're going to check if the form is able to be logged in. And this just means that, as you saw here, as long as I don't have something in our input, and this something needs to be at least 3 digits long, and I don't have something in my password, and this also needs to be 4 digits long. So if I change this to 3, then this works. If I change this back to 3, the password, then well, we can't log in. This won't change green. So if I pass in another letter, then the login form is going to change into green, and it's also going to log in. So it's going to validate. So let's go back to our application, and we're going to do form, and we're going to listen for a on key up, which we're going to assign to arrow function again. And basically within here, we're going to create 2 if statements. First, we're going to check if the login username dot value, so we're going to grab onto the value of it, is not equal to an empty string, and so this is not the only condition. The login username dot value dot length is greater or equal to 3, and we're not done. The user password dot value is also not equal to an empty string. My kid is just going bananas. And the user password dot value, so the user password dot value dot length is greater than 3. Unexpected identifier. What is your problem? So you. Oh yeah, we're missing an and here. And okay, so if all of this are true, then we're going to grab onto the submit login form. So that's the button. I should actually change this to button submit login. Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. So it's basically the button. And we're going to do class list, and we're going to remove the class of danger, so btn-danger-c, and we're going to copy this and add the class of success. Okay, so we can already try this out. Basically, come on, if da-da-da and da-da-da, as you can see, it's going to change green. Okay, so this, if this is under free, it should it should change back. So we need else. We're going to copy this and going to remove the class of success. I'm going to add the class of danger. Okay, so let's try this out again. Click on it, type something in here and type something in here. And if I remove this to only 2, then it's going to change back. Again, this and this could be done much easier by creating a function, which we're also going to use more often. So let's go down here in our utility classes, and let's say we're going to create, so to do, create a class switcher function. Okay, so this function will basically, let's call this class switcher. Basically what this function will do is it's going to check for the element. So I'm going to type in here element, and it's going to check for its current class and the next class. So we can say whatever element is passed in here, we're going to grab onto its class list, and we're going to remove the current class. I'm going to copy this, and after that we're going to add the next class. So let's take this function, let's go up here, paste it in. So we're going to pass in the submit form. We're going to pass in the class that we want to remove, so this one, and we're going to pass in the class that we want to add, so the success class. Just paste it in. So copy and paste. Okay, so I'm going to comment this to out, and I'm also going to copy this down here and just remove the success class and add the danger class. Danger. Okay, so let's try this out. Click, pam, 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 pam. It's green. Pam, it's red again. Add one more. It's green. It's red and it's green. It's red, it's green, it's red, it's green. And also comment this part out. And try it out again. Bam, 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 and boom, it works. Okay, so we're done with this part. Now all we need to do is also validate the form itself. So let's go down here, and so we are in the form, and we need to create a few messages which will alert the user if something's missing. So for this we're going to create we're going to grab onto the submit login button, so to this, and this will only be active. First of all, we're going to create an onClick event again, onClick, and this time we're going to take in here a event, because as you can see, if I click on this, it tries to submit itself. So we're going to prevent this by grabbing onto the event and saying, hey, prevent your default behavior. So prevent default, and if I click on this, I'm going to click on the login form, nothing happens anymore. But we do want something to happen, and that will be to validate login. So this function will be fired when these two are valid. Okay, so let's create a const and let's say validate login. And again, we're going to have three conditions. So if the login username dot value is equal to an empty string, then we're going to show a alert. So in order for the user to know, hey, he should put something in there, and that something should be at least 3 characters long, we'll show the user a message. So we will show a alert. And this function will basically taking a couple of parameters. So let's create our show alert message. Type in here to do create show alert function. So let's create a const show alert, and this is basically going to take in 2 parameters or 2 arguments. The first argument will be the message that is going to be displayed, so string message again, and then a class name. So we're going to create the same thing that we did with our messages. We're going to create a div, document, create element, and this element is going to be a div. Now this div will have a class name, and this class name, now I'm going to use string literal, so backticks is going to be alert, and the class name that is going to be passed in here. So when this matches, so when this element will be created, is going to be created depending on what kind of function is going to be passed in here, and this will depend on what kind of situation we're in. So those if statements up there. So to this div, we're going to append now a child. I'm going to go to the document, and we're going to append a text node. So by creating a text node, we can now input here the string message that is going to be inputted into this function. Okay, next up we're going to create a const with the name of container. So document, create selector, and we're going to grab on to the log in container. And now that we have our container, we're going to insert before the container. So insert before, we're going to insert the div and the form. And from the form, there we go. So we'll go basically up here. And as I said, when we click on this button, okay, an undefined appears because we now need to pass something in our alert, and we're going to pass in a string of user name is empty or less than 3, then comma, and we're going to use the class of error. Now remember, this function awaits 2 arguments, a string and a class name. The class name is going to be passed in here, and that class name, we need now to go to CSS and create it, and it's going to be down here in our we don't have a message. We mentioned to create a utility class, because we're going to have a alert class, a general alert class, which is going to give margin top 1 rem and text shadow none. Remember, we need to take off the text shadow. Now we're going to have a alert error, which is just going to have a background color of danger, so variable of danger color. And then we're going to have, hey, sorry about that, but my computer just crashed, so I have to take everything back from where we left off. So we had our, yeah, we got so far. Hope everything got saved. Oh man, this is annoying. So we got our show alert class. We passed in the string and another class of error. we created, did we create our classes? Alert, alert error, and we need alert success, which was going to have the background color. So this will be success. It's going to have the background color of success. Okay, sorry about that. Just replaced my microphone. So we should have both of these classes. If I type something in here and here. Now you can see this error persists here. Let me go back to JavaScript and want actually to make it to go away. So we can now use a timeout function, which will just display this class as long. We need to actually go into our shoulder class. So let's type in here comment to do time condition display. So we're going to create here set timeout function. We're going to use a set timeout function, and this is going to use a callback function. We're going to use here a arrow function, and we're just going to pass in document.querySelect. We're going to select this class that we just created. Basically, we're going to select the class of alert, and we're going to remove it. Remove. Bye-bye. And now because this is, here we go. Because this is a set timeout function, it's going to do this after a certain time. And we're going to pass in here milliseconds of 3000, which is equal to 3 seconds. So basically, this alert should display in 1, 2, 3, go. Go away. Yo, it's gone. And the same thing for all of them. They're going to disappear after 3 seconds. Okay, so we're not done yet. I still need to go back into our validation. So to do alert, and this is our validation, exactly. Now else if, so we got a user name. If there's nothing in there, then we're going to display this alert. Now if there is something in there, so we're going to create a else if statement. If there is something in there, but the log in username dot value, so the login username dot value is not empty, so it's not equal to an empty string, and the user password dot value is empty, then we're going to create another alert message, then show alert. We're going to congratulate first of all that, well, the username is now, so user name correct, but, and success. We're going to type in here now, we're going to use a success message, but we also have a second alert that the password, so I should use this one, the password is empty or less than 4, and error. So basically this should tell us that if we click on this, username is empty, but if we type something in here, then it's going to be username correct, but password is still empty. So now we need to go further and say else if. So if all of them are correct, then we should submit our form, and then we're going to grab onto the submit form login, and we're going to check if the class list contains the class of btn success, because this means that everything until now is then correct. And if it does, then we're going to go to the document.querySelector. I'm going to select the body, and we're going to change its inner HTML. I'm going to use template literals again, and I'm going to just copy this in. I don't want to type this one out. So we're going to change the complete body to a home container, which also needs a style. So the class with the div with the class of home container, which is going to contain an h1 with the logo title. It's going to say hi, and it's going to say whatever logo username value is going to be passed in there. So let's try this out by clicking first of all on this. We're going to pass something in here, pass something in here. It's not green. Now I'm going to change the password. We're going to show the password. We're going to log in, and it's going to say hi and whatever we passed in there. So let me click on this. This was going to send us back to, you can say, index.html, to this href. And yeah, basically that's it for the project. Now I still see that let me close this up. I see that the alert message, I don't like how the alert message is handled. Why is this? So class of alert. Oh yeah, I know why. Because this alert message should also have the specifications of the button. So the button is here. I'm going to say comma and alert, the class of alert. Okay, so the alert is going to, if I would use Sass, because I love Sass, I would just say, hey, alert class, extend button class. And then the alert class would have, you can see, it has the same class as the buttons. Boom, it works. Now all we need to do is style this part, because this should also have, let me just go back here, the class of home container should have the same style as the main login form. Wait just a sec. Login container, where's the login container, comma, and also you there, sir. So okay, this works. So let's go home again. Let's say Norbert and 1 2 3 4. Is it 1 2 3 4? Yes, it is. Log in and hi Norbert. Okay everyone, so hope you enjoyed the project. If you did, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel if you're new. I'll be creating more projects like this every week, and catch you next time. Bye bye.